to the good Paladins of Azeroth. It is with optimism that I, Holy Locked, bring you my overview of the Venthyr Covenant. The Venthyr are another one of the covenants we will be getting in Shadowlands, and as I did in my previous videos, I will be going on the abilities that you get, the Soulbinds and Conduits, the Covenant-specific Conduit, a talent build to run with this Covenant, which Soulbind to go for first, which Soulbind to go for at max, or near max Renown, and if I feel this Covenant is worth going. And if you would be so kind as to like and subscribe, we Venthyr would surely appreciate it. And with all that said, let us begin.
Okay, so I'm here in Sinfall, which is the Covenant Sanctum for the Venthyr Covenant. Alright, and so starting off, I will be going with the abilities. As with every other Covenant, you do get two abilities, one Covenant specific and then one class specific. The Covenant specific ability for the Venthyr is Door of Shadows. Door of Shadows has a 35-yard range and is a 1.5-second cast time on a minute cooldown. So imagine basically a longer blink, and I'll go ahead and show you real quick. You can see it kind of forming, so you'll be able to see actually where you're teleporting, so that way you're not maybe accidentally pointing somewhere else and it's not going to take you where you don't want to go. I mean, it's pretty good for obvious reasons. You can use it maybe Mythic Plus to skip something or to get to places you otherwise just can't get to. So that's really nice. And then, so next up, we have the Ashen Hollow ability. Now, I know this ability, you've probably seen it, the 4-minute cooldown on a cast time. It seemed like this just felt really bad as a Ret Paladin. Well, I mean, in situations I can definitely see it being kind of awkward to use, but it fits into your rotation pretty well, actually. There's definitely ways around it. I mean, sometimes you just have to adapt the changes, but going over what it does. So, 1.4 second cast time, about 1.5 seconds. Alright, on a 4-minute cooldown, it lasts for 30 seconds, and it's an AoE ability, as you can see here. Pretty big range on it. I'm sure they did that because of the whole interaction with Hammer of Wrath, which I'll get into. Alright, so what it does is enemies in the area take around 7.5k shadow damage, and your allies in the area are also healed for about 7.8k. And it's reduced if there's more than 5 targets, so it will hit more than 5, but the damage is going to be lower on them, as to be expected, of course. Alright, and then while you're standing inside of it, your Hammer of Wrath, you can use it as if, say, you were in wings or something, or they were below 20%. You can just use it while standing in it. And the damage is also increased by 100%. The thing with it, the damage, it actually does the amount that your Judgment plus your Final Verdict does, so it hits pretty hard, actually. And, you know, now I'll lead into the potency conduit that you get that affects this. So here you have Hollow Discernment. Alright, Ashen Hollow strikes the lowest health ally and enemy within its additional time for 40% of its effect. So I tested this on single target, and so this thing, Ashen Hollow hits for a total of 15 times. I tested it single target and still only had 15 hits. Either, you know, it's not registering the hit, or it just doesn't work on single target because it needs to like judge like different targets' healths and do damage based off of that. Because when I used it on 3 targets, I did 48 hits, where it would be 45, which means that it only strikes 1 extra time. That I don't know if that's what they meant for it to do, because the wording is still kind of weird, because it says an additional time, so maybe that implies once, but you can also just read it as maybe it ticks every time. From what I've noticed, it only does tick once, and it's once on each target. The damage, nothing too amazing on it or anything, honestly, but that's not the point why you run it. Why you use it is for the Hammer of Wrath damage. Now, don't get me wrong, 7.5k damage on 5 targets, that's a good amount of AoE damage. But, you know, such a long cooldown, you would expect it to do a good amount of damage. The Potency Conduit, honestly, it's not that good compared to, you know, everything else you have, because you can only use it every 4 minutes, so it does lose a lot of value in that regard. Alright. And so now I'll go ahead and go into the Soulbinds. First up, we have Nadjia the Mistblade. Alright, and also any tree you see me running here, it's just tests I've been doing. It is on a weekly change, so I can't just change them or take them out or anything. So that's like everything you see here is not like a set in stone kind of path that I'm running. It's just things I was testing. Alright, so first off we have Ancient of Chaos. Dwarf Shadows disorients all nearby enemies at the target location for 6 seconds when you appear. And as you can see, the radius, it's a decently long radius on what I'd say about 8-10 yards maybe. So it's pretty good. Imagine using your blinding light. It essentially does, that effect. It can be pretty good. You can stop cast times. You can go into a pack of mobs, say in world content, or maybe even Mythic Plus or something, and just kind of start picking off targets. Pretty good. So it's also, like I said, pretty much an extra kick. It's an extra blinding light. So pretty good. And it does lead you into your first potency conduit. Also, the good thing about how Discernment not being that good is that you can run 2 potency conduits pretty comfortably because some of the Soulbind abilities are pretty good and they do outperform some of your own potency conduits. Alright, so you get a potency, a finesse, and then you get friends in low places. You loot 20% more infused rubies and dredgers throughout Revenant Breath offers you an expanded selection of goods. So nothing that's really going to impact your class here, more just for some flavor. Alright, now you have to choose a path. Alright, you either get finesse, potency, or endurance. You see here I have potency picked, so I'll go ahead and talk about each one. So if you go the finesse route, you're going to get exacting preparations. The benefits of well-fed, flask, and weapon enchants are increased by 15%, sorry. So the good thing about this, obviously, your buffs are going to be doing, they're going to have more value. The weapon enchant one is especially interesting because we are getting oils back, so that's going to do a pretty decent amount of damage. 15% doesn't sound too good, but throughout using it, it's going to definitely add up. Alright, then we have Familiar Predicaments. The duration of incoming interrupt scenario root effects are reduced by 25%. Pretty decent for Ret Pally, considering that you do have that problem with your mobility and everything, and something to reduce that, it definitely does feel nice. Alright, then you have Dauntless Duelist. Alright, the first enemy you damage in combat is marked as your adversary, and you deal 4% more damage to them, and they deal 2% less damage to you. You can only have one adversary at a time. Cool thing about this is, if the target you're attacking dies, it will switch. So that's a really nice thing to know. It's not just going to be on the first target you attack, and if he dies, you just don't get the buff again, because that would actually feel pretty bad. So 4% more damage. It may not sound like too much because 4% is slow, but over the course of a fight, 4%, it's affecting every damaging ability. It's definitely going to start adding up. So it's pretty good, and you take a little bit less damage from them as well. Alright, then you get your potency conduit, so it's nice. It's pretty much an automatic one. And leads into her special ability, we'll call it, Thrill Seeker. While in combat, you gain a stack of Thrill Seeker every 2 seconds, or 4 stacks on killing an enemy. At 40 stacks, Thrill Seeker is consumed by and granting you Euphoria, increasing your haste by 20% for 10 seconds, and it decays rapidly while not in combat. Not in combat, it really just goes down by 1 per second, so it's not going to be like, hey, after 5 seconds, it's just completely gone if you have a 38 stack of it. The thing about this, it's a flat increase, on when you're going to get it. So it's a set time. You're going to get it every minute and 20 seconds. Of course, if you don't kill something, then that is. You're going to get it every minute 20 seconds. I thought about it, so at the 4-minute mark, it would overlap with Avenging Wrath, but the way you're going to be doing your rotation, it's actually going to fall off right when you would want to be using it, actually. So you're not going to get the benefit from that ever, really, in Wings. Pretty unfortunate. You probably can get some, maybe if you're doing Mythic Plus or something, or there's a lot of fight with ads on it, because you're going to get those stacks, those 4 stacks on it. Which even then, it'd still be pretty difficult to time that, because it is increasing, generally every 2 seconds. Then if you kill an ad, boosting up to 4 seconds, it can just become really inconsistent. But nonetheless, 20% haste for 10 seconds is still pretty good, considering all your abilities are pretty much on a cooldown, so it will help out with that a little bit. So moving on, we have Theo the Mad Dude. Okay. So, starting off here, we have Watch the Shoes. Dwarf Shadows frees you from roots and snares. Once again, pretty good. Gives you basically another Blessing of Freedom. Of course, it doesn't have the duration of it, but it does help with your mobility a bit. Alright, then Leisurely Galt. Dwarf Shadows has 2 charges, but the cooldown is increased by 30 seconds, so it's going to be a minute 30, but you do get 2 charges of it. The downside about this is that it does take you away from potency conduits, so you're probably not going to be running that. Unless maybe you're in a group that specifically, requests it, Alright, and the cool thing about the Mad Duke is you actually get 2 potency conduits early on, which not every covenant gets. It's pretty much exclusive to Kyrian and Venthyr. Yes, the other covenants, besides Nightfade, of course, Nightfade does not have that. For example, Necrolords does have that, but it's on their third Soulbind, so you're not going to get that till later on anyway, and by that time you'll have your second potency conduit on another Soulbind, so it's pretty much irrelevant. Alright, so starting off, Refined Palate. The effects of combat potions last 20% to 100% longer. That's pretty insane. So, say you have a 20-second potion. Alright, so it's either going to last an extra 4 seconds or an extra 20 seconds, obviously. So, you're either going to have a 24-second to a 40-second long potion. That's pretty insane. I wish they would kind of reduce that, the percentage of it. That's an 80% difference. That's pretty crazy. So sometimes you're going to be able to do really good damage because your potion's lasting twice as long. Or sometimes you're just going to get, a little bit more boost. Maybe, I feel like they should make this like 40% or 30%, but I feel like maybe they add that in so it's not just a default like, oh hey, wow, this is, really good. But I do think it does need to change. That is such a big gap, but I guess it does fit in with him being the Mad Duke. It's kind of crazy, kind of RNG. So moving on, Soothing Shade. Your spells and abilities have a chance to call Tubbins and Gubbins to your side for 12 seconds. Parasol in hand, of course. Standing in the shaded area gives you 350 mastery. That's a decent amount. It's about, let's see, let me try to do the math here for a second. It's like an extra around 15% mastery, so read it as like 15% more damage done, because every one of your abilities does holy damage, of course, besides Blade of Justice and Crusader Strike, but your final verdict or Templar's Verdict is going to get the benefit from that, as well as your Execution Sentence and your Wake of Ashes, because Wake of Ashes, although it does say radiant damage, it is affected by your mastery. It's pretty good if you're able to stand in the shaded area and get the damage, but you're not going to always be able to do that. So it can be kind of hit or miss at times. Alright, so next we have Token of Appreciation. Alright, so it grants a shield that absorbs 670 damage to allies who aid you with healing spells or beneficial magic effects. But you can only get the shield every 20 seconds. Each ally for 20 seconds. A little bit of a defensive. It's always nice. It does lead you to a potency conduit. But, the benefit of Venthyr is that you can go to potency conduits pretty comfortably if the ability is worth it. So the Soothing Shade, it can definitely be worth it at times. Maybe if you're not just kind of running around a lot, which in Nadjia you are doing a bit of running, as you will with a good amount of fights and raids. But if you can kind of just stand there, this would definitely kind of pull ahead, and I think it feels pretty good. Alright, so then you get an Endurance automatically, and then you pick between these two, a little bit of flavor. So, Life of the Party. So these two both have to do with your Covenant Sanctum weekly event, which is you throw a party for your guests. So these don't really matter too much, but I'll go over them anyway. Life of the Party. During Ember Court, your guests gain an additional happiness for each event completed. When the court concludes, the effects of any decrees bestowed upon you are increased. Alright, and then you sow Exquisite Ingredients. You have a chance to obtain an assortment of flavorful herbs and beverages when you kill an enemy that yields experience or honor. Alright, so yeah, nothing too crazy there. So let's go ahead and move on to his special ability, Wasteland Propriety. Ashland Hollow, which is your Covenant ability on the 4-minute cooldown, remember that. Signals the start of tea time, granting you 10% versatility to you, and then 4% to up to 4 nearby allies. So in a Mythic Plus group, it's going to affect everybody. In a raid, it's just going to affect, 4 nearby allies. It lasts 40 seconds, so 10 seconds longer than your Ashen Hollow. So pretty long duration on that. So a 10% versatility increase for 40 seconds. Pretty nice. But then again, you can only use it every 4 minutes, so it does kind of lose some value there being tied to your Covenant ability. So lastly, we have General Draven. Alright. So first up, I'll talk about Unbreakable Body. Your equipment takes 50% less durability damage from death, so you're going to save a bit on your repair bills, and your gear won't be going right as fast if you're dying a lot, wiping a lot, that kind of sort of thing. Then you have Expedition Leader. Leaving a rested area increases your mountain speed by 10% and your out-of-combat regeneration by 100%. It lasts for 10 minutes, and completing a world quest refreshes the duration, so pretty good for world content. The good thing about this is that you can really just pick whichever one you want the most, because it's not tied to any kind of power conduit. So you get your Endurance, and now you have your first choice over here. So then you have Built for War. While you are above 80% health, you gain 1% strength every 3 seconds, stacking up to 5 times. So just imagine 5% strength while above 50% health, because that's when the effect will fall off. That's a good amount. 5% strength. Strength is really good in this expansion so far. The scaling for your gear is just it's a lot better than, say, your mastery or something. Alright, then you have Superior Tactics. Successfully entering an enemy or dispelling an ally increases your crit chance by 10% for 10 seconds. And you can only get it every 30 seconds. Crit obviously good with the expurgation for Blade of Wrath to get that dot tick on there, because it is kind of struggling to get up. I talked about this in a previous video, but I've gone 3.5 to 4 minutes without even getting a single proc on this, so it loses a lot of damage. So that crit buff can definitely help out with that aspect of it. Only thing is you have to interrupt or dispel an ally, which your only dispel being as a ret is Clintoxin, so poison disease effects. So if you can get a dispel on that, you get the crit chance, but it's not as reliable because you're not always having an interrupt. In Mythic Plus, yes, of course, you can keep those up a decent amount. Alright, then you have Hold Your Ground. Standing still for at least 4 seconds grants you 10% stamina and 4% increased healing done, and this effect persists for 4 seconds after you start moving. So a bit more health, and you do a little bit more healing. The healing, not too relevant for Retribution Paladin, even though, yes, you do have Word of Glory, you do have Flashlight for those heals, but, you're not just constantly really healing yourself. But the 4%, it doesn't hurt to, get a buff. I don't want to sound like I'm just complaining about it. The 10% increased stamina can definitely help with some survivability in fights, so maybe this can be doing a lot of damage raid-wide. Alright. But, personally, Built for War, the 5% strength, I don't even see how you can compare these to that. Even the 10% crit every 30 seconds, this is just up constantly. You're not always falling below 50% health, because being a Ret Paladin, you do have, Bop, Shield of Vengeance, and Divine Shield. Alright, which then leads you to an automatic potency conduit. And you get to choose between these two over here. Now, I get, not really flavor, I guess, survivability and mobility. So Dwarf Shadows gives you a shield that absorbs damage equal to 15% of your max health, lasting 8 seconds. Duration's not that long, so it's like you'd have to almost time it for the damage that's going to happen. But, then again, the cast time, you're not going to always be doing that. Alright? In terms of, pre-casting, it's not going to always be so obvious. But, it does lead you to a potency conduit, so, yeah. Alright, so then we have Move as 1. When a nearby ally gains temporary increased movement speed, you also gain the benefit up to 30% for 8 seconds. So, say you're staying next to a road, they use Sprint, you'll get some of that speed boost. But it does lead you to an Endurance Conduit, which, for Red, is pretty weak. I don't have them on here because I reviewed them actually in my Kyrian video. So, go ahead and watch that. Timestamps are in the description, so you can just skip along to those. I just go a brief overview of them because it's nothing too insane for a Ret Paladin, honestly. Alright, then his special ability, Service and Stone. Damage taken below 40% health is reduced by 10 seconds, so nice survivability in case you do follow. And when you die, you leave a stone husk which shatters after 3 seconds, dealing 100% of your maximum health in damage split among nearby enemies and healing among nearby allies. Pretty good, in case you die, obviously. It's going to be doing a good, obviously you get more stats, but as it is right now, a good 23k damage, which obviously that hits pretty hard. Alright, so moving on. So I will be talking about now which Soulbind you should go for first versus at max or near max Renown. Alright, so at the start, you're going to be getting Nadjia the Mistblade and Theotar the Mad Duke. You get him for doing the first part of the Covenant campaign, so it doesn't take long at all. Alright, so for these two, the first one you're going to want to go for, Theo, you do get those 2 early potency conduits, so that's pretty nice. You can get your Virtuous Command up there, or your Expurgation in terms of Vindication, even Truth Wake if you want to. Nadjia, she doesn't really give too much of a benefit until later on, towards where you get Dauntless Duelist and Thrill Seeker. So early on, her value isn't too insane. You're missing out on the AoE Disorient, so that can feel pretty bad sometimes, but it's pretty niche. I'd personally go with the potency conduits. So first up, I'm gonna have to go with Theo the Mad Duke to start off with. Now, a harder question is what to go for at max Renown or near max Renown, because near max Renown you do get the Dauntless Duelist and you'll get Built for War. Now you may be wondering why you don't get General Draven. It's because you get him for completing the campaign, which is about, I think, 2.5 months after the expansion comes out for doing the campaign. So you're already going to be pretty much a little over halfway down the tree, assuming you kept up with your Renown. Alright, so it's really just a toss-up between the 4% damage for Dauntless Duelist and the strength here. The haste, not too insane for a Ret Paladin, sadly, even though haste, is your best stat. You can't line it up with wings at all, so some other classes can get benefited from this because, they can do damage outside of wings. Granted, we can too with Final Verdict being a thing. With Final Reckoning being a thing. But it still doesn't even line up with that because at the time where it would line up with wings is actually, you're not going to be using it because the buff is only 10 seconds and you'll be using wings pretty much right after it falls off, so it's never going to line up for you. Unless, of course, you are getting some kills, then you may be able to pull it off, but it's not going to be super consistent. So at max Renown, so with the testing between these two, overall, I did do more damage with Nadjia, with her, and that was without using Dauntless Duelist when I was testing recently, so with this, you're going to do even more. General Draven, he is pretty close. When you die, doing that damage is pretty nice, but you have to die for that to happen. This can fall off, but the 5% strength being such a good stat, this is percentage based, so the more strength you get, the stronger this is going to be, but this is just a flat 4% damage increase, so this, as another percentage, it's going to scale with your gear. So Nadjia does pull ahead here. General Draven is really close, so you can still go him. He's not bad by any means. The damage, it's such a small percentage of damage that they actually differ in. As you get later on in gear, Nadjia may start just pulling ahead because, Throw Seeker, even though it doesn't line up with your wings, with more damage, you're just going to be able to toss out more abilities. Okay, so now I'm going to be talking about a talent build you can run with this Covenant. Alright, so the talent build I have here is pretty much, I'd say, your standard talent build you're going to want to be running. It's a little clunky, because Seraphim 3 Holy Power, Execution Sentence 3 Holy Power, but if you do get this off optimally, it is your best damage output. I tried Holy Avenger because it does line up with your Ashen Hollow, because you're going to use this with your second wing, so it's essentially a 4-minute cooldown as well. It does line up with it, so you can use it with your Hammer of Wrath, because it does work inside Ashen Hollow. But overall, Seraphim was just pulling ahead. Crusade and Sanctified Wrath, sadly, not doing as much as Final Reckoning. Final Reckoning is insane. I could definitely see this vote getting nerfed. I hope it doesn't. I really hope it doesn't, because it feels really nice to have damage outside of wings. But yeah, I'd recommend this talent build for running the Venthyr Covenant for all Soulbinds. That's not to say you can't go Holy Avenger. Seraphim does pull ahead, but Holy Avenger is a close second. Divine Purpose is just so RNG that it's really hard to measure. Righteous Verdict doesn't really work because it falls off. You can kind of run it with Crusade to keep it from falling off, especially in wings, but Execution Sentence just does so much more damage than Final Verdict. And Zeal, Mythic Plus, this is pretty nice because you are doing target swapping a lot, but even then Execution Sentence still does a lot of damage. Okay, so now I'll be talking about if I think the Venthyr Covenant is worth it. So at first glance, the Venthyr Covenant definitely doesn't seem like it's too worth it because, yeah, you have the 4-minute cooldown on that. And so at initial looks, because you're not always seeing the Soulbind when you're picking your ability. You are, in a sense, but if you're not really paying attention to that, if you're just kind of just looking at abilities, which I understand a lot of people do, for good reason, because this is the ability you're going to be stuck with the whole expansion, you want it to feel nice to press. And Ashen Hollow being the cast time and a 4-minute cooldown doesn't feel especially nice, but hey, the damage is there. If you care about damage, yes, Venthyr definitely does feel good. If you're looking for more fluidity, of course it does kind of fall off because of the long cooldown, but the Soulbinds, pretty good. You have Nadjia with the haste and just overall damage increase, so pretty strong Soulbinds on the Venthyr Covenant. I like it, actually. I was surprised. That's why I say actually, because I'm actually surprised I did enjoy it, because when I first saw this coming out on the beta, I almost just didn't even want to test it because of just how bad it felt. That's also why this video just took so long, because testing did take a little bit longer because of having to wait for that cooldown to come off. Even with character swapping and everything, it just took a little bit more, and I wanted to get out, what I could, and the other covenants just allowed that. And also this one, just with General Draven and Nadjia testing, it was close. I was trying to really figure out which one would be better. But overall, yeah, Venthyr does feel good. The damage is there. It works pretty well with your Execution Sentence, with your whole Ashen Hollow. It's a good damage in it because it just does take all the damage that you do. and that constant ticking damage and the buff to Hammer of Wrath is pretty nice. It works with some of the legendaries you get, but I'll talk about that more in my legendary video that I'll be coming out with. And yeah, that's my overview of the Venthyr Covenant. Alright, and if you made it through the video, I just want to say thank you for watching. Like and subscribe if you did enjoy the video, and leave a comment down below. I do read all of them and will answer you the best that I can. Follow me on Twitter. I'll have a link in the description. I tweet out whenever I'm updates on videos, whenever I'm putting out the videos, like when they go live. And if you have any questions, feel free to DM me on there. I do answer on there as well. It can sometimes be faster because just the way the notifications work and everything, YouTube doesn't always notify me right away when you leave a comment. So if you need a fast answer, that may be your best way to contact me. Alright, and in the next video, I will be making a tier list of all the Retribution Paladin Covenants and the Conduits. The specific ones for the Covenants and just all your Conduits in general. I'll be ranking those. So if you like tier lists, keep an eye out for that video. And thank you for watching. Take it easy.